Trader Tim is at it again. Let's talk about Tim Connelly's dramatic moves, his willingness to trade future draft capital to try to win now. Let's talk about all that here on the John Krasinski Show. With the star of the show, John Krasinski from The Athletic. I'm Jim Suhan from the Star Tribune. This is TalkNorth.com. Best way to listen to this show or any show at TalkNorth.com. Please subscribe to your favorite podcast app. It's free. It's the easiest way to listen. Brandon Morton's our producer, as he has been for so long. We're coming to you from the Aquarius Home Services Studios. And we want to thank Aquarius Home Services, Princeton's Liquors, Chew Vision Institute, TSR Injury Law, Head Flyer Brewing, and Shepherd Goods and Lamb Chops clothing line. All right, John, just tell me what you were thinking as you were covering the draft on Wednesday night, and Tim starts making deals again.
Yeah, I mean, in one way, Jim, not surprising, right? Because he has already in his very short time with the Minnesota Timberwolves shown that he is not afraid to make a deal, that he's going to be super aggressive in making trades to better the team, especially on draft day. That said, when he essentially conjured a top 10 pick out of thin air to get a player who they very much believe fits exactly what they were missing on offense, a bucket getter, a shot creator, someone who may eventually be an heir apparent to Mike Conley at point guard if he develops in the right way. That to me is like the most creative and sort of, I guess, audacious deal yet. Now, obviously, the Gobert deal is the calling card that he has, and that was a huge gamble and risk. But this one was more of a sign of sort of his relentlessness and just trying to work the phones and understand, as the show goes on, sort of the limitations that the Timberwolves are going to be working with over the next couple of years in terms of roster building, in terms of payroll, all of that. And so for him to get up to number 8, to take who he believes is the best shot creator in the draft and not have to give up any picks this year, and also not have to give up any of his rotation players or any players at all to go get it, while essentially trading an 11-year-old right now who's going to be picked in 2031. It's remarkable. Like it was an unbelievable coup for Connelly. And we'll see what happens with Dillingham and how he develops and all of that. But this is a team that is going to be really strapped for ways to improve and believes it's on the cusp of championship contention. And they went out and really filled the biggest need possible without literally having to affect anything of their immediate situation and present. It was surprising, shocking, crazy, and wholly impressive for him to be able to pull off something like this.
Yeah, I figured he'd try to do something. I didn't think he'd be able to get a player of that quality out of the top 10 from a conference rival. Later on, let's ask what San Antonio is thinking, a young team that could seemingly could use a player like that. For now, does this affect their view on bringing Kyle Anderson back, that they brought in a guy who's going to be in the rotation, maybe 2 guys who could be in the rotation?
Yeah, I don't think so, Jim. What Tim Connelly told us after the first round on Wednesday night, he did say that they are still very much determined to bring back the rest of their guys, especially I think Kyle Anderson is a guy that they do want back because, Dillingham is super exciting, right? He is electric. There's going to be, a whole lot of just juice that he brings to this roster, but he is also 19 years old and he was a 6th man at Kentucky last season. And so I think that Wolves fans should very much be excited, and I think that he will very much help, but this is also a team that is going to be in a Western Conference that is even more difficult. And so they're going to need their veterans as well. And Anderson is valuable. He definitely, Chris Finch loves him. He can play multiple positions. He's certainly big. Dillingham is small at 6'1". So I do think that there's still going to be a priority to bring back Kyle Anderson and maybe even Monte Morris as well. We'll see about that. But I do still think that one thing that Tim Connelly made clear in our talk was that they expect Rob Dillingham to play. He's not going to come in and go to the G League. He's not going to be, a guy who sits on the end of the bench all the time. They need him to play. But I still think that they will want to bring back Kyle Anderson for all of the versatility that he brings to the table, and just have another piece off of the bench to use.
So they have no draft picks now, I think, for the rest of the century.
Yeah.
Does that bother anybody in the organization?
I mean, there is a risk, right? I mean, we can joke about them trading an 11-year-old. Right now, my son is 11 years old, and so basically, maybe they traded him in this draft. But also, what if that son? What if that player is the next LeBron James right now? Who knows? It's certainly a risk down the road, because one thing that we do have to lay out there is that the perception of this draft coming into it was that it's one of the weaker drafts from a talent perspective in quite some time. And so, I think that certainly factored into the San Antonio Spurs decision to make a trade and to kind of dump out of the 8th pick, because I think that it's essentially a belief that, hey, what we can get down the road around Victor Wembanyama will be more valuable than what we can get right now for him. Maybe they're wrong. Maybe Dillingham is going to be, the next great, microwave scorer coming off the bench, and maybe he develops into a dynamic point guard, and the Wolves have found, the answers to all of their questions over the long term. But so there is certainly a risk in trading this pick, but they traded it in part because of the collective bargaining agreement. Given that they are in a win now mode where they believe their championship window is open right now, this was the furthest pick out that they could trade to get an asset in return. And what, the logic makes sense in terms of Tim Connelly saying that the Wolves were not going to be able to get someone this dynamic and this cost controlled in free agency. They do not have the money to spend to go out and add in free agency a player of this caliber. They were going to have to make a trade. They're going to have to make picks to address that major weakness in this offense's arsenal. Was, Anthony Edwards is essentially one of their only true shot creators. So for Tim Connelly, the calculus was, if we don't make this trade and give up, some flexibility down the road in the future for helping a team right now that was one step away from the finals, we're not going to be able to acquire a player this talented in any other means. And so it was, hey, we got to go. It's now or never. Basically, he said, like, his quote that I loved was, we're at the big boy table. You can't be. Now is not a time to be scared. And this is a fearless move by Tim Connelly to make this happen, to give Anthony Edwards, to give this offense a jolt in a major way. And so he said, he basically took the Rams GM's mantra of F them picks and went and got one for himself.
Fascinating stuff. All right, let's we haven't even talked about Chris Finch's contract extension. We will get to that. I'm also very interested in talking to you about Shannon, their second pick in the first round, what turned out to be the second pick in the first round, who's a very intriguing player. Let's get into all that. First, though, we want to welcome a couple of our newer sponsors. Let's start with Princeton's Liquors in Maple Grove.
Yeah, Jim, Princeton's Liquors, Maple Grove. Bill Princeton has been in the liquor selling and peddling business for decades with his family. And he's also a big time Timberwolves and Lynx fan. He was an intern with the Wolves and Lynx in 2000, 2001. He wore the Crunch mascot suit while he was out making public appearances. So he's been a part of the Timberwolves community for a very long time. And he has been a part of the Maple Grove and the suburban community in terms of selling great options for drinks and beverages for a very, very long time. They have some of the best craft beer selection in the state. They have THC seltzers and gummies that are legal now, and they've got into that. And they also really specialize in their bourbon selection. Our friend Steve Terry, and the supporter of this show, went in to Princeton's Liquors just last week or a couple weeks ago and said, yeah, their bourbon selection is legit. So definitely get in there. Check that out if you want it. He is a third generation booze slinger. His grandfather turned Princeton's Liquors into a liquor store as soon as Prohibition was lifted, and they've been in business ever since. So go to Princeton's Liquors in Maple Grove. Tell them the John Krasinski Show sent you, and just revel in the selection of all sorts of cocktails, drinks, everything that you could ask for. Princeton's Liquors in Maple Grove.
Another company that you have a personal involvement with, Chew Vision Institute.
Chew Vision Institute in Bloomington, chewvision.com. We're coming up. I'm really getting excited. Went in there during the playoffs, got a very thorough, very warm and easily accessible evaluation of my eyesight to look at what my options were for improving. I've been wearing glasses for almost my whole life. Every few years, you're spending hundreds of dollars to get new glasses. And so I got to a point where I just was kind of tired of doing that. And so I went into Chew Vision, went through all the paces. They took me through a bunch of tests to find out what the best procedure was for me and for my eyes. And we settled on LASIK surgery. And later this month, in July, I'm going to be having LASIK surgery with Chew Vision. Really excited about it. The people there are super intelligent and knowledgeable. They've been in business for years and years. They know how to handle anyone's cases individually. There's no pressure. You go in, get your evaluation. They'll give you ideas for the best routes that they believe, and then you can make the decision for yourself. Chewvision.com. That's CHU vision.com. And as we go through this process and through this journey, I'll update you on all of the things that they do for their patients. And I can't wait to be down there in July, get my vision corrected, and just be done with glasses. And I can't thank Chew Vision enough, and can't recommend them enough as an experience to get this process started. Chewvision.com, Chew Vision Institute in Bloomington.
And you mentioned Steve Terry from TSR Injury Laws. Steve always says, keep it simple. If you're injured, call TSR Law, 612-TSR-TIME, 612-TSR-TIME. They'll take good care of you. If they can't help you, they'll point you in the right direction. If they take your case, they won't charge you unless they win your case, and they win a lot of cases. That's why you see Steve Terry's face everywhere. That's why they're hanging out with Naz Reid. That's why they become one of the most popular companies in Minnesota, 612-TSR-TIME. All right, let's just quickly take care of Chris Finch's contract extension. Not surprising at all. Do you have any idea what the terms are and where they put him in terms of overall coaching rankings and in terms of income?
Yeah, I don't have specific numbers on it, Jim, but I know it's a 4-year deal. And what they did, the kind of unique thing about this was that, he still had 2 years and a team option on his deal. And so really, essentially what this was Glenn Taylor and Tim Connelly going to him and saying, hey, Chris, we know you're really underpaid. We know you've accomplished a lot. You've had 3 straight playoff appearances. You're already the second winningest coach in franchise history with the best winning percentage in franchise history. And so we're just going to go ahead and just tear up the end of your contract and get you locked in at a higher number. What that number is, I don't know exactly, but I do know it was a substantial raise from what he was making. And it really was an acknowledgement that he has exceeded his contract. And the Wolves did not have to do this. But this was definitely a push from Tim Connelly and from ownership to say, we have a good thing going here. We want stability. We want to lock in the people who are doing such a good job here. And we don't want any sort of reason for disenchantment. And so, when Chris Finch signed his initial deal and then his extension, in 2021, 2022, I can't remember the year of it, but he was a very unknown head coach. And I think he got paid that way. And he has since proven his mettle. And so there's an acknowledgement that from the organization that, hey, we're going to recognize it and we're going to give you some more money. So you're happy here. He's been an incredible leader. He's done a great job on the sideline. But mostly he's really helped unite this whole organization, business side, basketball side, players love him, all of that. And so, this is the Wolves saying, you know what? We want to reward you for what you've done so far. And I know that Chris Finch really appreciated it. And I do think that it is part of the larger striving within the organization for stability, given that there is some instability, certainly at the very, very top of the organization right now with the ownership situation.
Yeah, I always also wonder if Tim Connelly was very aware that he was making huge money for someone in his position, and his head coach, who just finished third in the Coach of the Year, was not making industry standard.
Yeah, I do think that's fair. Certainly. I mean, Connelly got recruited here by Laurie and A-Rod, and then, and Glenn Taylor signed off on a very lucrative package to lure him away from a division rival. And I think that if you spend time around Tim and you talk to him, there is a little bit of, it's not guilt, but it's certainly a recognition. He's self-aware that he's making all of this money and that this is an organization that historically has been sort of cast as being a bit penny pinching. And so I think that there was an effort, certainly on Tim Connelly's part as well, to say, I can't be the only one being rewarded for this. And so, we talked about this on the show earlier this month when Tim Connelly got kind of restructured his contract. One of the conversations that he had with Glenn Taylor was that he didn't want extra money for himself necessarily, but one of the things that he really wanted to have happen was to have his staff in the front office have their pay increased to a little bit more of like league average. And so I think those talks are ongoing as well. They have also been talking to Chris Finch's assistant coaching staff to get them locked up with their contracts before the league year begins on July 1st. And so there's just kind of a recognition overall that maybe the pay across the board for the executive and coaching level has to increase a little bit. And I think that right now Glenn Taylor has been open to that and is doing that as a sort of show of faith and an acknowledgement that, yeah, it's time to start rewarding a team and a group that has put together one of the best teams in the NBA. And I do know, as I've said before, that should Alex Rodriguez and Mark Lowry win in arbitration, these are moves that they would support as well in terms of being aggressive and increasing pay to keep people who are doing a great job happy and sticking around for a long time.
Let's get to Terrence Shannon Jr. First, though, want to hear more about Head Flyer Brewing.
Head Flyer Brewing, Northeast Minneapolis. I know we've had a lot of rain lately, but we're starting to see the sunshine again. Beautiful summer nights. No better place to be than sitting out on their huge deck right outside their tap room, having one of their many just outstanding beers. They also have THC seltzers. They have an array of beverages that you could want. Head there on a weekend, there's probably going to be a food truck out there as well. It's just such a warm, inviting place to go. Bartenders are great. Everyone is super friendly. They have TVs to watch games. There's trivia nights. There's all sorts of live entertainment that comes through there as well. But mostly it's just you walk into that big tap room right on Hennepin Avenue, Northeast Minneapolis, and it's easy to find a seat, and everything is just nice and comfortable. And that's what my wife and I have been going to Head Flyer since long before we had a business relationship with them here at Talk North. And we love their beer. We love the people who run the place and can't recommend it enough. So stop into Head Flyer Brewing in Northeast Minneapolis And again, tell them the John Krasinski Show sent you, and they'll treat you well and really take care of you.
And let's also thank one of our favorite sponsors on the network, Shepherd Goods and Lam Chops clothing line.
SGLamchops.com is the place to go for incredibly comfortable and stylish casual wear, sweatpants, hoodies, t-shirts, shorts, whatever you can think of. SGLamchops.com has it. Go there for the promo code JOHNK20, JONK20. We'll give you 20% off anything you order there. Craig and Jordan, long-time Wolves and Lynx fans. You'll see them courtside at Wolves and Lynx games all of the time. Talking a little trash, kind of being the voice of the fans, being right there in the middle of it. Really good guys, really good people, and it's a local company that is really doing big things. And I've always said that my favorite pair of shorts are Shepherd Goods Lam Chops shorts. And, just everything that you put on, you can feel the quality, you can feel the craftsmanship, and you look really good when you're wearing it. So go to sglamchops.com, use the promo code JONK20 for 20% off anything you want there. And at the end of this show, we will answer a Twitter question, and the winner will get a free pair of Lam Chops shorts. So thanks to sglamchops.com, Shepherd Goods, and Lam Chops Clothing for their support of this show.
Going into the draft, I thought they would be very lucky if they had a chance to take Terrence Shannon Jr. They get him with their second first-round pick, as it turns out. Take us through and we're also talking about somebody who was recently found not guilty of a rape charge. Take us into their decision-making process, and do you think they had him targeted the whole way?
I do think they did, and so this is kind of like he was always certainly in the group of players that they were looking at 27. And we'll just kind of break it down piece by piece here. First of all, I do think that when they went into the draft on Wednesday night into the first round, they were not optimistic that they could get up into the top 10 for a player like Dillingham to address some of their scoring needs. So if they had not gotten Dillingham, I think they were still looking at other sort of ball handling scoring guards, and Isaiah Collier from USC, Tyler Collect from Marquette, names like that. But Terrence Shannon was also very much on their radar because he's 6'6". He has some size on the wing. He's a natural scorer with Illinois. He's also 23 years old. He'll be 24 in July. So he's much more mature from a physical and emotional standpoint than a 19-year-old that you're going to draft. And when you're looking at adding players to a team that was in the Western Conference Finals, if you're down at 27 and you can take a kid with a lot of experience, that may slow the learning curve for him. And so he was on their radar, so much so, obviously, that they did do a lot of due diligence into a rape and sexual assault charge that he had against him last year, stemming from an incident at a Kansas bar in September. And Shannon, throughout the ordeal, maintained his innocence, said it was a case of mistaken identity. He had a couple of Kansas players who were with him that night that testified on his behalf about it. There was no any kind of DNA evidence implicating him in the crime. And he says that the woman who was making the accusation simply had the wrong person and maintained his innocence the whole way through. He had a trial earlier in June and was acquitted during that trial. And Tim Connelly was very emphatic after drafting Terrence Shannon that he believes, and from the work that they did on the case and talking to people around the case, that Terrence Shannon is innocent in this. And he spoke glowingly of Terrence Shannon's character, said that they've talked to friends, coaches, family, all sorts of people who have been around Terrence Shannon, and they all rave about his personality, his character, and all of that. And so he said that they do not have any concerns in that regard about Terrence Shannon. And so they've done a lot of work on it. They feel really confident in it. We'll see, I guess, how it all plays out, but they believe that they got a good wing with size who can defend three positions and who can score with physicality. He's averaged almost 9 free throws a game last season for Illinois. Really has a nose for the bucket. And again, another player, Jim, who gets out in transition like Dillingham does. They want to play faster. This is an offense that ranked 17th in the league last year. That also, I think, in the Western Conference Finals against Dallas, you saw that they just didn't have the firepower to keep up with Luka and Kyrie. Ant needed more help on the perimeter in terms of guys who can get their own shots. And both Dillingham and Shannon can do that. And so they really did target a specific need with these two picks. And it was, hey, shot clock's winding down. Can someone go one-on-one, get to the bucket and get fouled, or create their own good look from three or from the mid-range or anything? And both of these guys can really do that. And so we'll see where they fit in. We'll see, how it all comes together. But they really like Terrence Shannon, and they've been on him for a long time, leading into this process.
Yeah, I mean, as a player, I love the guy. I just love what he plays defense too. And he played for a very good coach in college. As you said, he's mature. Maybe the only flaws, you like to see him improve his outside shooting just a little bit.
Sure. Yeah. And that's the thing, I think with both Dillingham and Shannon, it's funny because I went into the draft last night thinking, well, this is a terrible draft. What are they really going to be able to do to help themselves? Then all of a sudden you see them take two guys and you're like, oh my gosh, how are these guys still available? What, you talk yourself into it a little bit here, but yeah, I think both guys, and we can spend a minute or two on this now, which is important because both guys do have question marks about, their games. Otherwise, they'd be much higher picks, or San Antonio wouldn't have traded for anything like that. So Dillingham is just really small. He's 6'1", 164 pounds. He's tiny. So how does he navigate playing against much bigger competition in the NBA? He's going to have to answer that question to see. He's electric. He's really shifty. He's creative. He's super fast. But he's very small. And so how does that translate to the NBA? For Shannon, outside shooting is something. He's also, he has, I think, I saw our guy Sam Vecini at The Athletic said he has one of the worst assist to turnover ratios for a player of his age in college, an older player, that, in the history of them kind of, recording that stat and following and tracking it for fifth-year seniors. So he's not much of a passer, and yes, the outside shooting could use a boost. The other part of Shannon's game that we want to see how it translates is he uses his athleticism and his physicality. He's 6'6" with about 225 pounds. He's a big dude, and he used that to overpower people in college and just get to the racket, throw guys out of the way and score. Really impressive to watch that. But will he be able to be that physical and that overpowering when he's in the NBA against, so many players who match up better physically against him? Either they're taller or they're bigger, stronger, all of that stuff. So that's a question that we'll have in terms of watching him get acclimated in this league. And how does he kind of find a way to stay as dynamic offensively and help the team in that way when he's playing against guys who are more his size?
Good stuff. And John, we'll be talking about a lot of these things as the summer progresses. A lot of speculation we can do about where these players end up, how they help the team. For today, let's wrap up the show with a Twitter question.
Yeah, we'll go with, since hopefully people are going to be listening to this today before we go into the second round this afternoon, from Shane 0415, who do the Wolves pick at 37? Again, super impressive that Connelly did not have to part with 37 even to get up to number 8 and get Dillingham. So they still have another pick. And one of the really interesting parts about this is that Tyler Kolek, who is a point guard from Marquette, who I think the Wolves really liked and expected to be gone much earlier in the draft, is still out there. Maybe he goes in the first couple of picks with the second round, but I do think that he's a player that they'll take a long look at. Also, a guy that I'm intrigued by is Juan Nunez, who is a bigger point guard who played overseas. Shooting isn't great, but good size, good passing, floor general. And if they want like another kind of more prototypical point guard where Dillingham is kind of a combo scorer type, Nunez might be a guy that just intrigues me. So we'll see what they do at 37. Maybe they just take a draft and stash guy because they got 2 first rounders. But I like both of those guys as possibilities at 37 if they're there.
Good stuff, John. I appreciate it. Hey, listen, everyone should check out the Viking Update show as well. That's a show John and I do on the Vikings. We've both been covering and watching the Vikings for many decades. We bring a lot of perspective as well as analysis on that team, which will also be fascinating this year. For today, thanks to John. Thanks to Brandon Morton. We'll talk to you soon.